Andy. Welcome to Career Hotline. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Would you like to introduce yourself, what you do for a living?
I'm Andy Vo. I am 30 years old and I am currently an electronics engineering manager.
How long have you been in your industry?
Well, I've been a manager for about 2 years,
hmm
but I've been in the career field, just in engineering and electrical engineering since I graduated college in 2018.
Andy's been in the engineering field for 7 years total. She's been a manager for 2 years now. And I know, Andy, you have a lot of schooling that you went through. So I would love to talk about that. Before we move on to your schooling, just a little clarification about your role. Do you work at home? Do you do a hybrid setting? Do you work in an office? What does that look like for you?
In the engineering role, I started off in a hybrid setting, 3 days in office, 2 days at home. But now they've kind of with the whole back to the workforce thing,
Yes.
they have the leaders coming back in office full time. But since I started my career, I've always been in office full time.
When you were younger, Andy, what did you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you always wanted to be an engineer?
No, not at all. I didn't even know
Mhm.
what engineers were until I got to college.
Yeah.
I liked fish, so I wanted to be a marine biologist. So
Oh,
I thought that
love
that's what
that.
I, and then, I thought I was going to get into criminal justice,
hmm
just because I liked watching Criminal Minds and thinking like
Yes,
that,
me
but
too.
weren't really exposed to me when I was young. So I like to kind of do things now to expose it more to younger generations because of that.
Yeah. And that's why you're here with us today. So let's move on to your career path. Let's start with your schooling journey. So you graduated high school, and then did you right away had some college that you had in mind? Did you knew that you wanted to study the field that you're in today?
After high school, I went into college to UTSA because I was going to school in San Antonio. So I went to the college there in San Antonio. I went in undeclared at first because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. That was kind of the best route, I think, for me and just for people in general, because I've heard, 70% of people going to college pretty much
Hmm.
change their major.
Yes.
So that's kind of what I went in knowing that I would probably eventually change it. So I was undeclared. I had an undeclared counselor every semester when I would choose my classes. I would talk to her. And so I was doing the basic classes at first, and it got to a certain point where I needed to start doing classes for my major. She was talking to me and she was like, "Well, what are you good at?"
How long
That's
into
fine.
the school did your counselor say that it was time to decide?
I think it was just about a year. And
Okay.
so when I was picking my classes for my third semester,
hmm
that's when she was saying that we need to start a path somewhere. She asked, a good starting point just to get us in the right math and science classes, because that's going to determine a lot. She asked, what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? I said, I've always been good at math and science. And so that was a no
hmm
brainer for her. She was like, oh, well, why don't you become an engineer? Right. And that was the first time I ever heard the word engineer. I was like,
Oh,
well, I don't want to work on trains. Like I didn't want to
trains.
become, yeah, like the caboose or, I didn't want to
Yes.
become that kind of engineer. So that's what I thought an engineer was. And she was like, no, that's not what an engineer is. Like, and so
Yes.
she was like, do you know what an engineer is? Are you interested in, if you were in technology, what would you like? I was like, well, I like computers and electronics and stuff. And so she was like, okay, well, let's put you in computer engineering. We'll just start you there. From there, computer and electrical engineering are very parallel paths.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they work together the whole way and then they split off. I guess that's not parallel, but they take all the same classes up until about the last year because one goes more software based and the other one goes more hardware based. So
Okay. Makes
electronics
sense.
and electrical. Yeah, so we take the same classes. When I came to that last bit of classes, I realized I the more electronics and the hands-on part of it and not as much the coding. So that's when I decided to go the electrical engineering route.
That's like the last year of college, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I figured that out a little bit earlier. I don't think
Uh-huh.
you really need to know between those two until about a year and a half. For engineering, the pathway they've always said is like a 5 year degree. That's kind
Yeah.
of always been the thing about engineering. I did it in about 4 years. I mean, I did 18 hours, sometimes 21 hours a semester, which is normally 15 hours is what most people do. That's five classes. So
You
I was
were
doing more
pounding
classes.
it. You were getting
Uh-huh.
You wanted to cut
Yeah.
it down from 5 to 4, basically.
Yeah, I also took a break in between college to join the Navy, so
Oh,
I was already
yes.
a little bit older than everyone. So that's also in between college. That's why I wanted to finish it a little bit sooner.
When you graduated, what degree did you officially graduate with?
So I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering.
What college did you go to? I don't think we said that.
Yeah. I started off at UTSA, UT San Antonio,
Mhm.
University of Texas San Antonio, and then
Right, yeah.
I joined the Navy. After the Navy, I went to LSU, Louisiana State University. I graduated from LSU.
Could we talk about your master degree?
I went into the workforce right after
Mhm.
my bachelor's degree, and then my company actually offers to pay for higher education or just continued education. So I completed my master's degree online through Vanderbilt.
Mhm.
So I got my master's degree in engineering management.
How long was the entire program? How long did that take you from start to finish?
It took me, I think, about a year and a half to finish
Mhm.
my master's program. And so it wasn't, because I took it every semester, summer semesters as well.
So you finish your bachelor. Walk me through what the job applying process was like. Did you knew you wanted to work at this company? What was your thought process going straight into the career?
I was in the Navy before, so I
Mhm.
worked in the Navy. I was a aviation electronics technician, so I was hands-on the airplanes as a technician. That's kind of like a mechanic in a way, but I worked on the electronic side of it. That put me into this aeronautical field where I had experience, and that was my only experience. I never did any internships in college. That's huge for engineering to do internships. I never did. I thought I was at a disadvantage, but I think with my Navy experience, I was able to apply. My current company now is Lockheed Martin, which is one of the biggest defense contractors, and so they actually create a lot of the airplanes in the Navy or in the militaries because I already had experience working on their airplanes for the Navy. I think that was kind of a leg up. I applied to hundreds of jobs, so really, I always tell people out of college, don't just apply to three or four or what you think you want. So I applied hundreds
Yeah.
of jobs, and it's even things I didn't feel like I was qualified for, things I didn't feel like I was interested in, and literally only one called me back. And then that was the
Wow.
one that actually, yeah. So of the hundreds, I mean, one called me back. I got an interview. They flew me out. That was actually the one that hired me. And so even though maybe it wasn't the one I wanted to be, I was in the
Mhm.
company and I was able to move around from there. So it was so much easier and better to get your foot in the door.
What roles were you looking at? Were you looking at engineering roles when you were
Mhm.
applying,
Yeah, I was
researching?
looking at mostly entry level, like electrical engineering. So
Okay.
that's what I would just look for is just entry level electrical.
Okay. So you got a call from Lockheed Martin
Mhm.
and then you flew to Georgia, correct?
Yes, yeah,
Yes. You flew
very
to
much it.
Georgia. And what was that interviewing process like? How many interviews? How long was the whole process?
It was really only one interview.
Hmm.
This was pre-COVID. They would fly you out there before then, and virtual world wasn't really a thing. So I flew out there. It was kind of a in-office interview. It was mostly behavioral-based questions. There wasn't too many technical because I don't have that much technical experience, mainly just what the
Hmm.
courses I took in college were,
Yeah.
and what my experience was in the Navy. And he just showed me around kind of the spaces, the facility, what I would be doing. And then that was pretty much, it was just that one interview. And then I think it was a few weeks later. Turns out I actually had an offer in my junk email and I had no idea. So the recruiter called me and said, hey, like do you have questions about your offer? You have a day left to respond. And
And
so
you're
I
like,
had no
what are
idea.
you
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. So I,
Gosh,
I looked at my junk mail.
hmm
I saw the offer and I just accepted it. Like I didn't even care about the salary.
you
Just
knew it was a
even
field you wanted to be in.
hmm
That's so
yeah.
crazy. It was in your junk mail.
Yeah.
How long
Yeah.
was it in there?
I think at least a week or maybe 2 weeks.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean it's unfortunate.
yeah.
I sent an email and thanks for the interview after, but I haven't heard back.
Yeah.
Apparently it was just sitting there. It was
Okay.
great that I got it.
Was that the process like? Were you already in Georgia when you accepted it?
No, so with my company, they give you some jobs will give you a relocation package.
Hmm.
So they asked me if I'm a homeowner or renter. Obviously, I was a renter at the time. I was in college.
Yep.
And so they gave me a rental relocation package
Hmm.
that would relocate me to Marietta, Georgia. Pretty much that was part of kind of my offer. And I didn't realize how great of a benefit that was.
Yeah.
And so like being in the workforce and seeing that that's not really normal or it's such
Hmm.
a great benefit to have I've
Yeah.
moved using that every single time.
So you moved from Louisiana to Georgia, started your career. What was your title going in to that job?
The title was test engineer associate.
Hmm.
So that's the associate title is a entry level one starting.
What was the benefits like working there? Obviously, you got the relocation package. I'm sure you have health insurance, vision, and all of
Hmm.
that too as well.
We have all the insurances, a lot of
Hmm.
company benefits like discount programs. We have the 401 matching. Pensions were no longer a thing, which was nice because it allowed, the younger generations to be able to jump around. And you didn't have to vet into the company,
Hmm.
like with pensions where you have to be there for so long before you
Yeah.
start getting retirement benefits. Same with PTO. You got PTO right off the bat. You didn't have to be there for a
Accumulate
minimum
them.
amount of time. Well,
That's
yeah,
nice.
so you didn't have to be there for amount of time. You
Okay.
accumulated them every month.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I first started, it was 40 hours of sick time just right off the bat.
Hmm.
And then every month you would get 10 hours. So it came out to a total of 4 weeks a year of PTO. And
So
then
what was
we
your?
worked nine
Oh.
eighties as well. Oh, sorry. We worked 980 schedules as well when I started. 980s is 9 days in office,
Hmm.
um, which is a total of 80 hours. So you get every other Friday off pretty much. So normally it's 10 days in office, that's 80 hours
Hmm.
in 2 weeks. Every other Friday you get off. So we work
Yeah.
9 hour days.
9 hour days, just so you can have Fridays off
Yeah.
every other Friday, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That's so nice. And I feel like a lot of companies need to do that more.
Yeah. Now they switched over actually to 410. So 10-hour days, 4 days a week.
Now you have every Friday off, 4 days a
Yeah, I
week.
did.
You started as a test engineer. How long were you working there until you got promoted?
Yeah, so I feel very fortunate in like my progress and progression with the company and how much I've been able to move around, which is why I love the company I work for. But so I started off there, I think I was there for 2 years, maybe three,
Hmm.
before I applied to a leadership program within the company. So it was called ELDP, which is Engineering Leadership Development Program. So within this leadership program, they picked, I think my graduating class was about 20 people so younger engineers, kind of entry level or like lower junior level engineers apply to this program, and they picked about 20 people out of the 700 that apply. We're a
Wow.
huge company. We
Hmm.
have thousands of employees, but so I was selected to be part of the engineering leadership development program. So that program
Amazing.
has the intention of making the future leaders of the company. So it was a 3-year rotational program. So what happened was every year you found a new rotation within the company, and the intention was to kind of get yourself familiar with different parts of the company and different job titles or doing different kind of scopes of work.
That's really
So
cool.
yeah, so you didn't really work for any one person. I mean, you kind of did, but every year you would switch jobs and you just had to find your job. You just reached out to managers, you looked online, you found things that you're interested in, you talked to people. So then the manager would just agree to take you on and you would
Hmm.
just go there. The company would move me wherever it was. So my
What?
first one,
This is
so,
crazy. Wait, let's back that up. So every year, if you
mhm,
find a job in the company that you are interested in, you could
mhm.
essentially do that job.
Yes. And if they were able
What?
to, yeah, if that
So
manager
cool.
for that job said, yeah, come on over, um, then I would just go on over and do that job for a year. And they kind of knew that I was going to leave the next year. If you're part of that program,
Hmm.
they knew that. I mean, they would hope you'd come back.
Hmm.
when you're done with the program. So, and in the program too, every year they sent us to like leadership conferences, and we did a lot of like team building and a lot of different conferences and things to learn about leadership in the company. Definitely
Mm.
worth applying to and getting into, because I see why it accelerates your career path, just because you have all this experience. And, like for my company, we have the test labs, but we also have even manufacturing, and we have development, and we have, like all these different things that you could do. And then, so if you have a little bit of experience in everything, pretty much the whole company.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can put that on your resume too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
have all these roles on your
yeah,
resume.
you're
That's
suited for a
amazing.
leader like that. So that's kind of, they're trying to create the future leaders of the company. So my first role in that was actually doing the similar job to what I was doing in Georgia, just because I wanted something that I was familiar with. It was going to be
Hmm.
my first one. And so what I did in Georgia, I worked on the F-22 fighter jets. The one that I was a test engineer there. And so in Texas, F-35 had a similar program, similar job for the F-35 fighter jets. And so I went on to that role. So they moved me to Texas, and I was doing a similar role. It's a little bit different, but I was able to jump right in, and they knew that I had the experience. That job actually is the one that sent me to, Japan and Italy for months at a
Okay.
time. Yeah. And so I'll be there for a few months working in the test labs. And
Hmm.
then from there, when it was time for me to do my next rotation, I said thank you for all the travels. And then I went on to work in a development program. So,
And that was
and
your
then,
second year
yes,
in that program. Okay.
yeah. So then I worked development for the company. I worked for kind of Skunk Works, which is known as our secret, like secret squirrel stuff. No one knows what we do.
Okay.
After that, I actually ended up getting the job offer I have now. So I wasn't really the happiest in that role, but I was looking for my future. So I was looking at different jobs that the company offered, and one of them was an entry level manager position in Denver, Colorado. So
For Lockheed
even though,
Martin?
yeah,
Okay.
that role was 2 levels ahead of what I was. So
Hmm.
I was a level 2 at the time, and that was a level 4 position. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to get it. Might as well apply though, because whatever. So they ended up giving me a call and offered, I did the interviews and everything. Then they offered me the job. At the time, I was still in the leadership program.
Yeah.
So I had a kind of a thing where, do I finish the leadership program or do I go to this job offer, which is essentially, the job I wanted after the program, because it's a
Mhm.
manager position, a leadership position. At the time too, when I got the offer, I was actually in Japan working. I was there working, and they were like, well, we need you here in 3 weeks. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So then I flew back. I mean, I finished the work out there. Then I flew
Okay.
back, and pretty much the next week I went to Denver, and then, the company relocated me. So I left everything behind. I left the whole house behind, lived in a hotel, and then company moved my house, and
Hmm.
we lived in a hotel for a little bit. And now I'm here in Denver with my current role.
You had such a fun transition from your starting role to your leadership program to the role that got you to travel to Japan and then where you are today. So
Mhm.
it just sounds like you're always on the lookout for, the next best thing. Do you have any tips for applying? It seems like you're really good at that.
Like I said in the beginning, even when I was applying out of college, I just tell people, just apply. Like, what's it gonna hurt? Like,
Yeah, the
what's the
more the
worst that can
better.
happen? Yeah, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? It's that old saying. It's like, you'll never know unless you try.
Hmm.
Like, what is the worst that they tell me, oh, I didn't get the job? And so
Hmm.
that's fine. I already had a job.
Yeah.
It's really just where I wanted to be. I feel like I could be happy in most roles. And it's really what makes me happy is obviously the community or the things around me, what I'm doing, but how the work life balance is, and how my
Hmm.
life is at home, it's not stressful. There's always people that always say like, oh, well, the company can't stay afloat without me, or, if I can't take vacation because, like they need me. And I'm like, that's not really something to brag about, right? Like
Mhm.
that just goes to show that your company is not like hiring the people it needs to, or you can't take a break if the company is not going to be able to stay afloat without you. And I know my company, I knew the benefits, I know how it works already. So I think regardless of the job, as long as the job didn't expect me to work crazy hours
Mhm.
or whatever, which I know that with the company it doesn't, then I can kind of adapt and be happy. I think where I am now, I'm good to stay for a little bit. I don't want to grow too much more because I don't need to be the next VP and have all that stress.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more as I've been going. It's been more work, obviously,
Mhm.
more money, more stress. I think my levels are getting to that top there, so I'm good where I'm at now.
Let's talk about your day-to-day life at your current role now as a manager. I know you mentioned you do the 10-hour days so you
Mhm,
can have every Friday off. What does that look like when you clock in at work? And to clarify, your role now, you do go into an office,
mhm.
correct?
Yeah, all my roles have been pretty flexible. It's
Mhm.
kind of just been when I wake up, and right now I wake up about 7 a.m. and I get
Mhm.
into the office usually around 8. I only
Okay.
live 20 minutes away. It's sometimes like 8 to 6 because that's 10-hour day.
Yeah.
And and so some people get in at 7, some people get in at 6. I knew some people that got in at 10 and they stayed till 8. Yeah,
Mhm.
and so it's really flexible. But we work with our Florida counterpart, so they're on
Yeah.
Eastern time zones. They're starting their day earlier, so sometimes I'll get IMs or emails in the morning, but also they're handling things in the morning, and then we can handle it in the evening.
Yeah.
But yes, I'll wake up, go to work. So this is just my current role now.
Mhm.
And really, it's just an office job mostly. Since I am a manager, I manage a team of about, I think, like 5 engineers, but my fuller team that I am a manager for is about 20. And so I'm just kind of checking emails, calling into meetings, the same, as a normal job, but it's mostly just technical discussions and a lot of
Okay.
programmatic things going on.
So now you're less hands-on and more
Hmm.
kind of, like you said, manager role, office role. You
Hmm.
do a lot of meetings and guidance. Do
Hmm.
you like that better, or do you kind of miss being hands-on?
Yeah, I do. And I think being a technical manager is nice because
Mhm.
I still have to kind of understand what's going on. And I'm still a little bit in the technical, like conversations and making technical decisions, but not as much into the weeds as my engineers are. I
Yeah.
do miss kind of the hands-on part of it a little bit just because like being an engineer, you want to be hands-on,
Mhm.
and have something to see. And so sitting at a desk all day is it's a little hard for me to adapt to, but I chose to be a manager, so
Yeah.
it's the people aspect of it that I
Yeah.
like.
Do you want to talk about a moment where you feel really proud to be in your career?
Recently, I've had a female engineer that I've worked with reach out and she asked if I could mentor her. After talking to her a little, it understood that she asked me because I'm a female in the engineering field and she doesn't see very many of those, but also I'm a manager and she's never had a female manager, especially being an engineer. And I wasn't her direct manager, but
Mhm.
she worked with me. And so she's never seen a female engineering manager. So she was kind of wanting, to follow my same career path. And so she wanted me to help with that and like be a mentor to her. So I think that really made me proud of where I am and to be able to kind of provide that for other people. And then just the day to day job, what we do, the things that we do for the country or for the military,
Mhm.
for what like my company does, is just really cool. And I know not a lot of people can say that in engineering, but I think my specific company and the things that we do and see are really interesting things.
Essentially, your efforts are being translated into something useful, not only for the company, but for the country as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's definitely something that would motivate you every day. And I think that's a great job to be at in
Hmm.
general. What is the most challenging part about your job or your industry?
I'm inclined to say being a female in a male dominant field. And I don't know too much if that's as much of a challenge as maybe just being in an engineering field in general, because we do work with a lot of stubborn people. I mean, engineers know it all, right? Everyone is right. No one's ever wrong. So
Mm-hmm.
you do get into a lot of situations where no one's going to admit they're wrong or everyone wants to do it their way. So it's dealing with that. And my very first year or years, in the job. So first of all, I was the only female, first female actually in that role, and I was the only female, the only minority, the only one under the age of 40, pretty much. I was challenged a lot, and I don't know, because I was junior, but because I was female, because I was minority, I don't, and I wouldn't say I blame it on any of that, other than maybe because I was entry level, and they've been here for a while, so
Mm-hmm.
they know better. And so, just how do you kind of make your voice heard, and how do you do that, especially in these kinds of fields? Um, Really, that's a challenge that I'm still trying to kind of overcome or understand. And I think as a manager, I have a little bit more authority in
Yeah.
there, but also I can kind of translate some of that for my engineers. If they're facing those challenges, I can talk to them, understand where they're coming from, and maybe I wouldn't say side with them, but also try to like reason with them, either to go against it, or if they're for it, maybe then I'll back them up in
Oh,
that.
that's
So
lovely.
yeah, so that's the biggest challenge I think in this field is just
Just
working with the people.
finding your voice and knowing if you should voice your
Yeah.
concerns. Yeah, that's definitely a big challenge for a lot of people, especially in the minority. And back to what you were saying too, it's do I step out and say my feelings, my thoughts, or do I just hold back because at the time you were entry level? So there's a lot of moving parts that you kind of have to consider being in this industry. If you could change one thing about your job, what would it be?
My company is, it's defense. So there's a lot of old traditional kind of ways of doing things. I think that's the hardest thing that my company has to overcome. But, one thing for certain, like for sure, is I could do my job fully remote, for example.
Mhm.
That's kind of a newer thing. That's the younger generations. So I think they're having a hard time finding a lot of newer recruits or younger people because they can't level up to these other tech companies like Google or Apple, all these
Yeah.
kind of that cater more to a younger generation,
Yeah.
meaning my generation. So I think a lot of that, I wish that I would be able to work from home, even just partly remote, just because this is job we do from home. But the people that are kind of leading are the ones that have always been in office, that
Hmm.
have grown up saying, in office collaboration. And I understand that, but I think there's just a lot of old traditional ways of doing things, and it's not as progressive as it can be. But I mean, that's also just government.
Yeah, I think that you can apply that to many other careers too. I know
Mhm.
for sure a lot of people on here can agree that your job can most likely be worked at home and they still require you to go into an office. I think most companies should definitely shift towards where we are today, which is a lot of people are going to look for remote jobs. I talk to a lot of people that agree that you are more productive at home. And I don't know if you share that feelings as well, but I do
Mhm.
definitely feel like I'm more productive at home. I like to work in silence. When you're in an office, I get distracted by a lot of the side conversations, maybe because I have FOMO. But do you feel like you would be more productive at home, or do you like being in an office more because you get more work done there?
I mean, either way, I like both. I haven't really gotten to work from home very much, so
Hmm.
I can't really compare it there. So
Yeah.
I do think though, the company needing to adapt to the times, a lot of the workforce that's going in is looking for fully remote jobs, especially, and the people that are in the workforce, they got that taste of it during COVID, and now they're
Yep.
they're looking to transition to fully remote jobs. So really, unless we have this big competitive edge, we're not going to get good talent because we're not offering fully remote. And maybe some positions are. I understand why we don't, just because we have clearances and things that
Yeah.
require us to be in office, but
Hmm.
it's just if we can't offer that, then we have to offer something else that's going to bring in good talent.
That brings back to when you're talking about new talent. I feel like in the new world that we live in, I'm seeing a lot of, if people are working in an office, they're going into an office with like a ping pong table, like a
Yeah. Mhm.
basketball, and they have a full like food court, meditation center, all of that. Do you have any of those at your,
No, which I wish we did. Yeah. We don't even have windows in some areas
no?
just because, yeah, well, because we work in like a classified environment sometimes.
Yeah.
So you can't even have a window. I do. Sometimes that's the one thing that if I were to switch careers, it'll be out of the defense
Mhm.
industry and into kind of things where they do offer those fun, I've seen like or like Mimosa Friday or something.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean things that are kind of more fun and more collaborative and for like younger generations. We don't even get free pens I see some
No
companies give out
pets.
free stuff.
Yes.
We don't even get that.
Now we'll move into the closing statement, which we will provide guidance for anyone that is interested in being an engineer. If there are any students out there, any professionals that are looking to transfer to a different career, Andy, what advice would you give to them? Let's start with schooling. If
Mhm.
there are any students out there today that are interested in being an engineer, what degree would you recommend them?
Yeah. I mean, obviously engineering, there's so many different fields of engineers. There's mechanical, electrical, petroleum, chemical,
Mhm.
environmental. There's so many different fields. So regardless, you can find kind of where you fit in and what you enjoy doing. I mean, obviously you have to be good at a little bit of math and science.
Yep.
And that's kind of when it comes to school, I always tell people we engineers are the highest paid salary straight out of college.
Mhm.
With a bachelor's degree, obviously. So you can finish it in 4 years. So what if it takes 5 or if it takes 6? And I mean, doctors take 8+ years. And so
Mhm.
I always joked about that. I'm Asian. When I told people I'm an engineer or my aunts and uncles, they're always like, well, why aren't you a doctor? I was like, well, I finished in half the time and I get paid
Mhm.
just as much, right?
Exactly.
I also get weekends off and holidays off
Mhm.
and I have a really good work-life balance as opposed to some in the medical field, which I mean,
I
they're
agree.
lifesavers and it's great, but it's such a rewarding career, I think, financially and also just what you do, just because you create a product and you have a finishing product and whatever you make, you could probably either see it on the shelf, see it fly, see it
Mhm.
do something, and you see it in action. And just knowing you had a small part of that. It will be tough. I mean, it is a tough degree, but it's not impossible. Just create
Mhm.
a good network. I've had my friends, we all worked together in college. We all helped each other with homeworks. We tutored each other on the weekends. College was definitely hard, but I also partied really hard too.
Mhm.
You don't have
We
to
have to.
give up. Yeah, you don't have to give up your college years just because you want to do engineering. So I think it's
Mhm.
definitely worth it in the balance of, I mean, there's balance to everything
Yep.
within college, your career. There's so many fields too that if you don't like one field, you can go to the next. And
Mhm.
having that degree means a lot.
Yep. So get your degree, and to summarize, having that science and math major is what you would recommend at a minimum for
Yeah, just being
degrees.
good. I mean, you could get a engineering degree.
Mhm.
But the classes in there, you go up to calculus 3, you take a lot of science classes, you take a lot of math classes, and then all your engineering classes would be math based or science based classes too.
Okay.
So just go to tutoring if you really
Mhm.
are struggling. We're all struggling with you. And one thing I would say for engineering students that I saw was really difficult for a lot of people in my college classes is every single one of those people were maybe the valedictorian or they made straight A's through high
Mhm.
school. They were always the smart ones in school. And they come to college and they're making D's and C's and they're not the smartest anymore. So they're really struggling mentally with that, but we're all in the same boat. Like we're all, like
Yes.
I made A's all through high school and grade
Hmm.
school, and then I come to college and I saw my first C. And I think just having to accept that you're no longer the smartest one, but you are surrounded by a bunch of other smart people and like-minded people.
Yeah. So that would be your one advice is to find your circle and know
Hmm.
that you're not alone and a C is okay.
Yeah, and it's hard, but you'll get through it. And it's
Hmm.
so rewarding at the end.
I know we talked about this a couple of times, but interviewing process when someone gets their first phone call.
Yeah, so since as a manager now, I
Hmm.
actually conduct the interviews um, and do the hiring. And I think a personality hire is such a big deal. I mean, having the good experience and being smart and the technical side is a big deal. Just having a good personality and the willingness to learn and the willingness to kind of work together. I think that's one thing, at least I look for, is how adaptable are they going to be?
Yeah.
And especially in the engineering field, as I said, there's a lot of know-it-alls.
Hmm.
So if I get that sense that they're not going to adapt well or they're going to want to do things a certain way, then it's not worth it to me to try to have that hire that person on and try to get them to overcome that than to hire someone who's willing to learn.
Yeah. So be yourself, be authentic, and also be willing to adapt to the environment that you're in, essentially.
Yeah, just don't be a know-it-all
And
douchebag.
don't be a know it all. What advice would you give to someone that wants to be in a manager role like you?
So in a manager role, I think I got a lot of good feedback from some people that I had thick skin. And I think that was kind of a big thing is I have thick skin, but I'm also not so hard-headed and not so tough. Just being understanding and listening, I think is the biggest thing. And I'm so bad about wanting to micromanage, but I don't. So just really knowing that there's so many different people and personalities out there, and not everyone's going to be like you, or
Yeah.
not everyone's going to be the same. There's so many different generations I work with too, like 3 or 4 different generations, that generational differences as well. Just knowing how to adapt to each person and how to manage each individual. But
Yep.
I think the people aspect of it is a big one, and being there for your people, but also balancing kind of meeting the goal of the company.
Yep. That's a great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
For those students or professionals that are starting out as an engineer, what salary would they be looking at?
So I haven't hired a level one in a while, but
Mhm.
really just depending on where you are. So I actually, when I took my job first, I accepted an offer for 60,000.
Mhm.
And so Um, and I told you it was in my inbox for a while. I didn't even look at it. I didn't even try to negotiate. I
Mhm.
just took it. And so later down the line, I think a year later, so the good thing about my company is they reevaluate the market based off of similar jobs
Mm.
and, people in the market. And so they reevaluate the market and they put their people at like the median, the middle, or a little bit higher just so they are competitive with the market. And so when they did that, it actually, my salary jumped to like 15,000. So I was actually getting underpaid a lot. And I
Wow.
didn't even realize. Yeah, so I was really thankful for what I had, and I was
Mhm.
happy. I'm not going to complain. I was
Yep.
happy with what I didn't feel like I was undervalued or underpaid.
Mhm.
So I would say that was 7 years ago, 60,000, but
Mhm.
70,000 is kind of average now, 70, 75, and maybe in Denver especially.
Yep.
Mm.
For anyone starting out.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the 10 misconceptions about engineers, and then we can end it off.
Okay.
The first one is they have no social skills. Would you say that is true or false?
I would say it's mostly true. I'm not okay. There are social skills. I think most engineers would be the type B kind of people. I mean, you would think they would be type A, but it's a little bit because they're the math and science, nerds,
Mhm.
uh, to say so. they were the people that exceeded in math and science. And so if you think about high school and school, there's always those, those some of those people that are really outgoing that are really good at those things, and then they end up doing well or go into management positions like I did.
Hmm.
And then there's the people that are just all technical, like fully 100%. They never want to deal with a person. They don't
Hmm.
want to talk to people. They want to just sit in a lab in the corner.
Yes.
So yeah, so there are a lot of those as well.
Yeah. So kind
And
of 50-50,
yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah, just think about who was good at math and science.
Yeah. The second one is they love to fix everything. Is that true?
Yeah, so me personally, yes,
Yes, for you.
yeah, and that might have been why I was good at engineering. I always tell people too, engineers are complete opposite. Instead of finding an answer to the question, they come up with a question. They're
Mm,
given the answer. They're
love
given
that.
the final product. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
given what it needs to look like, what it needs to do, and they come up
Uh-huh.
with how it gets there.
This one is interesting. It says they're not creative. Engineers are
Yeah.
not creative. I feel like it would be
So
the opposite, no?
yeah, I mean, kind of going back to what I said, you kind of have to find a way to get to that solution. So you have to be creative in
Mm-hmm.
that sense. But maybe when it comes to the left brain, right brain, I can't draw a stick figure to save my life. So I can't write straight. If I'm gonna given a color book, I'll color exactly. The grass is green, the sky is always blue.
Yes.
The house is red. That's always going to be, and I'll never change it. And so
Yes.
I would say maybe in that sense, yeah, we're not very
Mm-hmm.
artsy.
Yeah, artsy. Next one is their work is boring.
I wouldn't say so. I think
No.
the things we do is just so fun and so,
Mm-hmm.
you never who else gets to kind of work on fighter jets, or right now I work on
Yeah.
nuclear missiles. Yeah. So who gets to say they touched these things and
Yeah.
created it?
I think it definitely depends on the point of view, right? It may be not be boring to you, but it may be boring to someone else.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things could be boring, but that's everyone's
Yeah.
job.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Next one is easy. They love math. Is that
Yeah,
true?
I think
Yes.
yeah, I tutor math on the weekdays just because math is
Yes.
so fun and it goes back to creative. There's so many different ways to get to a simple answer. And
Mm-hmm.
you think about like Common Core math that everyone hates because there's a different way of doing math. I mean, there's not a different seventh president of the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's different answers for math or different ways to come up with that answer. And so I think that's the fun part of it.
Mm-hmm. I've never thought about math that way. Just like I just want to solve the problem.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I was terrible at history because there was also is always like one answer, and I was like, can't
Mm-hmm.
there be other? Okay, all right.
This one we know for sure because we talked about before. Most engineers work in a predominantly male field, and that's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, and I don't know why. I don't, I don't know if it's because women want to feel like they're helping, caring, and they end up more in the healthcare field. Maybe that's why, but I feel like what we do isn't very masculine versus feminine.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And hopefully we'll just continue to get more female engineers, and then that will break the scale.
yeah, it's cool.
Well, that summarizes everything. I hope you enjoy this interview. And Andy, thank you so much for coming on this podcast today.
Thanks, Bo, for having me. It was a lot of fun, and it's great always talking about my career and what I do.
And we hope you enjoy it. And I hope you have a great day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.